Brookland News Live begins right now. Here's Jackson Mitchell.
And a good Friday morning. It's August 1st, the first day of August, meaning thousands really of tariffs are going into effect today and have went into effect. If you remember, we covered it here on the air that there was that harsh deadline of August 1st for when these tariffs were going to go into effect. I will tell you, last night there were some new developments on the Canada tariff front. We're going to talk tariffs, trust me, throughout the day. That is a big story we are following. But first, as always, a look at the feeds that we are following at this hour. Takes you first out to the well, not the International Space Station, but Florida, where we are awaiting a launch, a possible launch to the International Space Station from a US, Japanese, and Russian space crew from NASA. We're waiting for that to begin. We know there was a weather briefing think about 8:30 or so. We've been waiting to see what we're going to get from that. We'll be monitoring this event. There was a weather briefing. Some rain is expected to kind of have a possibility of interrupting into this mission. So we have been watching that throughout the last little bit here, and we'll continue to do that. Let's go over to this screen where we have been watching that National Traffic Safety Board, Transportation Safety Board, rather, hearing. We've been watching it for the last few days, where we are waiting to hear from the officials on the DC deadly plane collision. We'll be monitoring that. Over to continuing to talk about tariffs going into effect today. Take a look at a protest in Brazil, I believe, where tariffs have went into effect. They are protesting there on that. So we will monitor that as the day goes on. Let's take you out to a live look at the White House. No major events over there expected to happen today. We will continue to monitor this as well. So, lots of stories that we are watching at this hour. I want to take you first to the International Space Station, where we expect them to make this launch soon. Let's listen in here. What we're going to do, we'll listen in and we'll turn it up just a little bit so we can listen in to the crew. Okay, they're not speaking right now over the mics, but you can see those four astronauts. They're U.S., Japanese, and Russian astronauts. I feel like I would be doing someone wrong to even attempt to pronounce the names. They are quite complex and confusing. So again, this is in Florida. This is a NASA launch to the International Space Station. It's Crew 11. And again, as we were just saying, weather is posing a threat here. There is a threat from weather. That is the big story that we've been following throughout the last little bit. Is that there is expected to be rain. It is Florida in the 1st of August.
All right,
Summer, so
so
we are
we have been
expecting
listening
maybe.
to a weather brief. This was off air, by the way, but Nick and I listening to Launch Weather Officer James Tager give an update to launch director for SpaceX on the weather. This is something that they had set up a few hours ago to do one at the T minus 2 hour mark. And so here we are, and we have the update. And basically what they said was it is a sit, watch, and wait situation. We do have increased moisture in the atmosphere. You can certainly see that in the picture in the lower right hand of your screen. Cumulus clouds, light ones building in the area. The question is when these sea breeze storms and clouds develop, they are going to develop inland, which that launch pad that you see right there is literally 500 feet from the beach. So it's all the way as close as you can get to the water, right there at the Atlantic Ocean. But you see two things here in the weather. You see some low, thin, puffy cumulus starting to, be created in the area, starting to develop. And then you see those high cirrus clouds. Those high clouds are drier in nature. You want to see those. They are moving over the area. They look at those as a sign of good things, potentially to kind of mitigate against the increase in moisture. But overall, when the launch weather officer was asked where he would put the current POV updated to the second right now, he left it at 40% probability of violation, which puts us at a 60% go. That has been the go.
Okay, so you heard it there. 60% of a chance that they will launch this mission here. So we will continue to watch it as this goes forward and see where it goes. So that is going to be something to monitor here throughout the next little bit. A 60% chance of them still launching this mission. They say it's a sit, wait, and watch type of situation with the weather. We just had to listen in there because we heard them talking about this forecast. So we will continue to listen in. I want to go over to an event that we are monitoring right now over in Florida. We're expecting officials with the Florida Highway Patrol and Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, to speak. That is to come here in just a few moments. We will be standing by for that moment to get underway. Excuse me here. We are also live over at the Senate. Give me a second. We'll get that feed pulled up for you guys. There's the Senate there. Take you there now. Senator McWayne Mullen there speaking, the Republican from Oklahoma. That is over in the Senate business. Just to get underway here in the next few moments or so, we will continue to monitor all of these events. We'll sneak in our first break of the hour here. It's 9:03 now. We're going to sneak it in. More to come with you guys in just a few moments. Welcome back to Brookland News Live, a live look there in Washington. See the Washington Monument in the background, White House there, peeking out in the front. Look there, we are continuing to follow. Take you out over to I Drive Arkansas camera there. That is live there in Hot Springs. We are monitoring that there. Continuing to follow this here, though, taking you over to this NASA launch. We are nearly an hour and, I don't know, a little more than 30 minutes away from this launch. You see the top of the rocket there. So that's something to okay. So that's something to follow there. What we're going to do right now, though, is take you out to NTSB, who is holding a hearing right now. We've been following it, I don't know, for the last 2 days or so. We're on day 3 or 4, I believe, of this NTSB hearing on the deadly PC collision. If you remember, just to provide some context for you guys, it was on January 29th when a Black Hawk military helicopter and a regional jet crashed over the Potomac River, killing the jet, 60 passengers, and 4 crew members. That includes the 2 pilots. All 3 on the helicopter were also killed. So, pretty sad and devastating to hear what we saw here. So, we're gonna listen in for a few minutes, and then we will stand by for this Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and the FHP holding an event. We'll monitor that as well. So let's turn this up for a second. We might listen to it for long, might not, depending on when we have this hearing or press conference, rather, on illegal immigration enforcement from Governor Ron DeSantis and the FHP. Let's listen in here.
ADSB stands for those words. Every one of those words is actually important. It is automatic in the sense that it automatically broadcasts information. That is different than some of the other technologies out there where we rely on the interrogation from a radar on the ground, where then a transponder on board the aircraft replies, and that's how the location of aircraft is being measured. It is dependent because it requires the presence of a high accuracy navigation system. Usually this is a GPS system, but it doesn't have to be. What makes ADSB dependent is that we need that information to populate the fields in the message of ADSB. So if I broadcast my latitude and longitude, my ADSB system doesn't know my latitude and my longitude. I have to get that from somewhere else. And so therefore the system is dependent. It is surveillance. In other words, it isn't engine data. It isn't flight vehicle information system data. It is surveillance data. So latitude, longitude, altitude, velocities, aircraft information from a size and type perspective, flight ID, which is very helpful when you try to identify a particular aircraft. If air traffic control calls out, American Airlines, whatever number, you actually can now identify what aircraft that is being displayed and called out to you. And then lastly, broadcast, because it is broadcasting out that information. We often differentiate between ADSB out and ADSB in. ADSB out is the action of broadcasting this information from an aircraft. ADSB in is the action of then receiving that information on board my own aircraft from anyone else who might be broadcasting it. Now there's a couple of important points to make here. Is when we say ADSB in, for example, just receiving the information is only the first step. What's more important is what we do with that data once we have it on the aircraft. We talked about the ability to display it to the pilot for situation awareness. We can use it for issuing alerts. We can use it to improve separation in the air. We can aid air traffic control functions. Yesterday we talked about flow-based, time-based flow management. We can improve spacing between aircraft. And it's really that ability, those applications that we wrap around that data that represents the fundamental transformation opportunity that we have with the air transportation system. Another thing to highlight here is ADSB in is only as good as your ADSB out equipage level. So if people aren't
Okay, and as we
broadcasting,
were saying, we were going to listen
ADSB
into it until this event gets underway in Florida. That event in Florida now underway. Let's go live there. They're talking on illegal immigration enforcement to see their Florida HP officials, which is the Highway Patrol there, and Governor Florida Ron DeSantis. Let's listen in.
And was right there in the Tampa Bay area for many, many decades. So all I'll tell you is make sure on this day that you're training, saying your prayers, and eating your vitamins, brother, because he would have wanted you to do that. We're joined by the Florida Cabinet, the entire Florida Cabinet. Attorney General James Uthmeyer, Chief Financial Officer Blaise Angolia, and Florida Agriculture Commissioner Wilton Simpson. And I want to thank them for being here and what they're doing. And they've all been very helpful on Florida's nation-leading efforts to combat illegal immigration. And Blaise is just now a chief financial officer within the last couple of weeks, but as a state Florida senator, he was leading the charge on your behalf to do what the voters wanted us to do, which is to take care of this problem and not pass the buck anymore. So, and he just got into office. He's leading our DOJ audits of local governments, including Orange County, as well as Gainesville, Broward, Manatee. There's a bunch that are in the hopper, and I think it's really, really important to be doing those. You know, Florida, we have the second lowest amount of spending per capita of any state in the country. We've more than tripled our rainy day fund. We've actually maxed out our rainy day fund. I'm not constitutionally allowed to put any more into the rainy day fund because we've maxed it out. We've also been able to, at the end of this fiscal year, we will have retired close to 50% of Florida's debt. Over its 180-year history, we'll have paid down 50% just since the time I was governor. But yet, you know, we're still doing DOJ stuff on our own state agencies and particularly our state universities. And I think that's really important. You can always do better. But clearly, a lot of taxpayers have seen property taxes. They're paying more in property taxes than they ever have. And so where's that money going? You know, we hear certain things, but then we see other things. So that's going to be really, really good. So thank you for doing that, Blaise. I know it's an important mission. We're also joined by our Executive Director of the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, which of course FHP is included in, Dave Kerner. We do have our Director of the Florida Highway Patrol, Colonel Gary Howes here. And then we have the fearless Larry Keefe, who's the Executive Director of the Florida State Board of Immigration Enforcement. And all I can tell you is for folks in DHS and in the federal establishment who are, you know, really trying to do the right thing, they're trying to implement the president's policies. It's not always that easy, particularly after the 4 years. But none of them can move as fast as Larry, and he's always pushing the envelope to get the job done, particularly when it comes to immigration enforcement. We do have some of our state reps. You know, I saw Barnaby, Placencia, Bankson. Who else do we have? Is Rachel Plakin here? I thought I may have seen her. Okay, good. Well, thank you guys for being here. So we have said, you know, when I became governor, we said we are not a sanctuary state and we're not going to allow sanctuary cities. So one of the biggest pieces of legislation I signed my first year was to ban sanctuary cities in the state of Florida. It should have been done before. It hadn't have been, and so we leaned in and got that done. And I know Blaise Angolia was a big help with doing that. Now, that year, 19 and 20, was a little easier because under Trump 45, if you had somebody that we picked up, particularly through our justice system, you know, they were happy to take them and repatriate them to their home countries. Biden came in and things changed dramatically. He opened the border and interior enforcement really collapsed with respect to illegal immigration. So we saw what was happening at the border, and you know, people act like, oh, just let those border communities just deal with it. It doesn't affect anyone else. That is the furthest thing from the truth. That open southern border affected the entire country, and I think everybody saw that in pretty short order. So we were the first state to launch in to help Texas back in 2021 with what was happening at the southern border. And so our Operation Lone Star deployed more than 1,000 guardsmen, national and state, as well as state law enforcement, including Florida Highway Patrol, to Texas to help stop what was happening at the southern border. it's interesting. You had those communities flooded, but then people going everywhere. And our guys would apprehend when they're coming in. They say, where are you looking to go? And a lot of them were looking to go to Florida. Because you remember, everyone wanted to be in Florida. You didn't want to be in San Francisco then. I was locked down for COVID. You had homeless, all this stuff. So people were naturally doing it, including those folks coming across the border. And so we obviously knew that'd be it's a huge issue for our state. So we have to do it. And, you had a lot in the media that were like, you're not a border state. Why do you care? Well, no, we do care because it's a national problem. And even if it didn't directly affect Florida, even if none of the illegals wanted to come to Florida, we, as the third largest state in the country, we support the sovereignty of this country. We support having enforceable borders. That's a good thing to have as an American. So we were happy to be involved in that. And isn't it interesting? Yet a lot of the people, they didn't care about, what was happening at the border. What happened when we sent 50 to Martha's Vineyard? All of a sudden, it was like panic time to have 50. And they called out the National Guard, and they redeployed them. They got them off that island very quickly. And that's what happened. So, and then you started seeing busing to New York City and Chicago and this, and they didn't like that very much. So obviously this was going to have an impact across the country, and we stepped up, and the FHP was a big part of that. We also launched Operation Vigilant Sentry because we saw that, particularly with instability in like Haiti and some of these places, people want to get on these boats and they want to show up on the shores of Florida. And under Biden, once they got to the shore, he didn't do anything really to them. So that really handicapped us. And so we said, you know what? The Coast Guard's out there. Honestly, the Coast Guard does work hard at this. There wasn't enough Coast Guard presence to stop all these boats. So we surged our maritime resources. And since we've done that, we've had more than 19,000 illegal aliens that have been interdicted by the state's efforts. That's in addition to everything that the feds and the Coast Guard and all of them stop. And that includes more than 470 vessels that just our folks under our operation were able to stop. And when you see some of these folks, they'll be with contraband. You got firearms, you got narcotics, you've got all this stuff. Why would we want a band of 15 Haitians armed showing up on the shores of Florida? Obviously, I don't think that that's a good thing. Incidentally, I had a tussle with the Speaker of the House and some of the legislators earlier this year on immigration, because I said President Trump's coming into office, we need to be full throttle in support, and we need to get this done with the deportations. They actually passed a bill that I vetoed that would have terminated Operation Vigilant Sentry. And so those illegals on those boats would have been able to pour in to this country. And, Blaze was one of the ones that was standing with you on that. But I vetoed that legislation. And the legislation we eventually got in was able to supplement what we were already doing, which I think is really, really significant. But just keep in mind, all this was done under a state of emergency for immigration, similar to what President Trump has done federally. And if you terminate that and you take the power away from the governor to be able to do any immigration enforcement, you have no maritime interdictions. Obviously, the southern border, that's not an issue anymore because that's been taken care of, I think, very well. But all the stuff we're doing interior, above and beyond what we would do just in the normal course of law enforcement, requires that authority. We did do the transport program. Obviously, a lot of people remember Martha's Vineyard, and that really helped open the eyes of, I think, a lot of people around the country that this is a major problem. But, there was New York City, Chicago, California. There was a lot of stuff going on, and those are sanctuary jurisdictions. And so they say they're sanctuary jurisdictions, but then they don't like when folks are being funneled there. And so it's interesting how that works out. We've also done a lot of strong legislation. We have enacted, finally, E-Verify legislation for legal workforce. We also made sure that there would be no IDs issued to illegal aliens in the state of Florida. Now, we don't do driver's licenses for illegals. We would never do that. But local governments wanted to issue IDs, not drivers, but IDs. Even nonprofits wanted to do it, and we said, no, we're not going to do that. And we don't recognize IDs issued by sanctuary states like California. So if you're illegally here, they issue you an ID. You come here, we won't do it. And that's the thing. If you don't want illegal immigration, then you can't provide any type of benefits to illegal immigration. That's one of the reasons we worked hard to get rid of in-state tuition at our colleges for illegals. That was instituted before I became governor. That's an incentive for people to want to be in the country illegally. ID cards and benefits are incentives. So we've worked really hard to police that, and I think we've done that better than any other state in the country. Now, that's all great, all the stuff that we did leading up. But when the Trump administration was getting ready to take office, we knew we had an opportunity to be huge partners in the efforts of actually seeing our laws enforced, actually restoring the country's sovereignty. And that, yes, that involves the southern border, and fortunately they're able to handle that at the federal level without needing the support of states like Florida. But then what about the interior of the country and all the things that's happened over these many years with millions and millions plowing in? Even people that come in on like a visa and stay, there's huge problems that come with all this stuff. So what tools do we have? Well, there's a program, a federal program called 287G, and Biden basically mothballed it when he was in for 4 years. But what it does is it allows ICE to delegate to state and local law enforcement the authority to perform specified immigration functions under the agency's direction and oversight. And so people will say you have federal, the immigration's federal, and that's true. But shouldn't states be able to supplement that? And of course they should be able to. And so this provides a framework to be able to do that. So ICE operations can partner with our state and local agencies to identify and remove both criminal aliens and run-of-the-mill illegal aliens that are in our communities. So to date, more than 1,800 Florida Highway Patrol troopers have completed their 287G training and have received their credentials. We have more than 100 FHP troopers that have been sworn in as Deputy U.S. Marshals, which gives them the ability to execute federal search warrants on the worst of the worst in terms of illegals that are in our state. We also have active 287G agreements with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Fish and Wildlife, and the Florida State Guard, and we've even expanded into some of our regulatory spaces. Now, because of the legislation I signed earlier this year, we required participation of all local and state agencies. State agencies is easy because I will just tell them, hey, you got to do it, let's do it, and they were eager to do it. Mark Glass at FDLE, Dave Kerner at they were ready, willing, and able to do it. Didn't have to twist their arm. That wouldn't have been true with every local, municipal, or county law enforcement agency. That's just the fact. They are all have a duty under the law to participate, and that means all 67 counties have signed agreements through their sheriff's department with the 287G program, and many, many municipalities have done the same. It's interesting with FHP and kind of all they've done. They were doing a lot with the border. They were doing a lot to help mitigate the damage Biden was doing here interior. But with Biden, you could have illegal alien get in a car accident, and if ICE wouldn't accept, then there was nothing they can do on the immigration front because they didn't have the authority to act on their own. Now they're able to do that, and they can work seamlessly with the federal government. So it's really, really positive to have that type of relationship. But because they're doing all this, and really in many respects are the tip of the sphere, I called for a big pay increase for FHP this year in the budget. And we had to fight for that, but we were able to deliver the largest pay increase in the agency's history in the budget I signed at the end of June. So I was happy to be able to do that. I think, one, and we want to do that to be able to retain good people, but we also want to recognize that there's great duties that are being exercised here that are above and beyond what would traditionally be called for in those circumstances. As we're working with the feds, and Larry Keefe's working with them as kind of our liaison, we're like, okay, what do you need, this, that, and the other thing? And everything we were doing was great, but we were able to apprehend illegal aliens faster then the federal government could detain, process, and deport them. And part of that is they just didn't have enough space. Now, we had some of our local facilities. You'd have sheriffs could put some people for somewhere, but that really isn't going to be enough. And so we sprung into action to help with that detention, processing, and deportation part of this, which is at the tail end of when somebody would initially be identified and be apprehended. And so we were able to, federal government, asked us to be a part of this. We're doing it. We created the facility, Alligator Alcatraz. Folks are contracted to do that on behalf of the state of Florida, but everything we do is going to be reimbursed by the Department of Homeland Security and the federal government. But we were able to stand that up in like a week. And you now have a situation where you have thousands of folks that can be there for processing and ultimately for removal. And there's this massive airstrip. I don't know, it was built many decades ago, but massive airstrip. They've built, all this stuff. It's all temporary, but they've built it. So you literally could have people, you drive them 2,000 feet, they get on a plane, and then they're gone. So thus far, we've had over 600 that have been deported from Alligator Alcatraz by ICE, and that cadence is starting to rapidly increase. And that's what I've told people. It's like, our interest is to facilitate the removal of illegal aliens. It's not to just, what New York was doing, they were just putting them up in these luxury hotels at your expense. Like, I have no desire to do that. Our detention and processing is all leading into the removal. And so that cadence is important. The more that's there, the more we'll be able to send, or DHS can send. And I've said we're even willing to expand that footprint if we need it, to Camp Blanding in Northeast Florida, and maybe even some others. But that's ramping up. I think it's doing good, but we want to see even more into the future. So the need, as I said, was simply because FHP is out there and they're able to interact and they're able to apprehend very quickly and very efficiently. You think about the roadways that are out there. We want safe roadways. We want safe streets. The reality is some of these people that are coming here illegally, they are not trained to drive the way we would do to get a license. They're not licensed drivers in the state of Florida, and you do see a lot of really tragic situations. And we have a state rep in the Florida House of Representatives, Cayenne Michael in Northeast Florida. Her son was killed by an illegal alien driver. And it's just thinking to yourself, it's like, why? This person shouldn't have even been on the streets. It had no right to be driving a car here, and yet they're out there, and now all of a sudden she lost her son. So the number of angel moms that I've met over the years whose son or daughter was killed by an illegal alien driver, it's pretty significant. And it's so unnecessary and so avoidable. So FHP, I guarantee you, with the apprehensions they've already done, I guarantee you they've saved many lives. Because if they weren't out there doing that, it was just a matter of time before you would see, maybe traffic, maybe otherwise, you absolutely would have seen lives taken had they not gotten these folks off the street. So far, FHP alone has apprehended, just since we started doing the 287G, they've apprehended almost 3,000 illegal aliens that were then later taken for immigration processing by the Department of Homeland Security. Over 500 of them already had an existing criminal record. They're actually convicted of things. It's like, why are you in the country when you've already been convicted of something, when you never had a right to be here in the first place? Our state troopers have stopped vehicles with illegal aliens that were possessing weapons, fentanyl, as well as large sums of cash, which, having large sums of cash in and of itself, a crime, and good on you if you're able to do that. But when I see it with fentanyl and I see it with narcotics, I think, okay, I know where that money's coming from, right? It's not like you're just out there working as an accountant 9 to 5. They've uncovered human smuggling operations that are working deep within our state Just in the past month, FHP has arrested a member of Tren de Aragua gang, which is a Venezuelan gang designated as a foreign terrorist group right here in Orange County, who had an extensive criminal history and an existing warrant. Up in North Florida in Wakulla County, FHP arrested an illegal alien who is a member of MS-13 gang. In Broward County, they arrested an illegal who's a member of the 18th Street gang from Guatemala, who had 2 prior removals from the United States. I mean, what are we even doing, letting people come in multiple times like that? In Osceola County, they arrested an illegal alien who struck and killed a pedestrian and then fled the scene. Palm Beach County, they arrested an illegal wanted for murder in Guatemala. And in Hernando County, they arrested an illegal who was trafficking 30 pounds of marijuana. Those are just some examples from just the last month of what FHP's been doing. They've also assisted federal partners at Homeland Security and ICE with more than 470 joint operations leading to the arrest of illegal aliens. In April, many of you remember, Florida conducted a statewide operation, Operation Tidal Wave, in conjunction with our federal partners, and that led to the arrest of over 1,100 criminal illegal aliens in 1 week. That's the largest number in a single state in 1 week in the entire history of ICE as an organization. And of those, almost 2/3 had existing criminal records. Now, to further combat the threat of illegal immigration, Florida Highway Patrol is establishing a new immigration unit, the Immigration Enforcement Section within the Bureau of Criminal Investigations and Intelligence, to specialize in immigration enforcement. This team of mission-dedicated troopers will work in close contact with local, state, and federal law enforcement partners to identify, locate, and apprehend criminal aliens across the state. We're proud of the great work that FHP is doing. I want to thank Director Dave Kerner for leading the charge. There's no other state in the country that can match our efforts. In fact, there's no other state that is even in the ballpark of our efforts. And you remember when the president came down to South Florida to tour the alligator facility, he said, and his key people like Stephen Miller said, we need other states to be doing this.
So we have been
You're
listening in there
eligible
to Governor of Florida, the Republican Ron DeSantis, who once had hopes of being a president. Now he remains to be the Florida governor. Okay, so we are going to monitor this on your screen, take you over to a few other feeds that we're following at this hour. Take it to this one. Waiting for this NASA launch of, I believe, 4 astronauts to the International Space Station. We are also monitoring the Senate, where we see Senator Chuck Schumer speaking there. And day 3 of the NTSB hearing, we are watching that. And there has been some new development over here for the protest for tariffs. We see President Donald Trump there. I'm not sure who that is on the left side. President Donald Trump there, though. Maybe it's the Brazil leader. Unclear to me right now. I do have some news we are following, though, right now. I'll take you live out to the White House, where we are learning today Steve Witkoff, who is the ambassador to Israel. I'm sorry. That is Mike Huckabee. He's the ambassador to Israel. Steve Witkoff serves as the special envoy to the Middle East. They are set to visit Gaza today. To note, this comes as the hunger rages on, so it is a desperate time for them to be visiting the land here. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, more coverage on the news that matters. Welcome back into Brooklyn News Live. I'm Jackson Mitchell. We are continuing to monitor tons of news. We are continuing to also watch this press conference over in Florida, where now you are seeing the Florida Attorney General speak there. We will monitor that event as it occurs. Today, that is the first day tariffs were set to go into effect. I want to read you some news directly from my notes for today's edition of Brooklyn News Live. President Trump signed executive orders on July 31st imposing new tariffs on imports from over 67 countries. Countries not named will default to a 10% on all goods. Now, those tariffs range from 10% to 41%. Just yesterday, we had some different news on Canada. Their tariff was increased from 25% to 35%. India hit with 25% tariff due to continued trade with Russia. Japan, South Korea, Brazil, Switzerland, Taiwan, their tariffs are ranging from 15% to 40%. This is the first time the US has imposed this amount of tariffs in such a broad way. This is the first time for something like this to occur. Want to go to markets in Asia and Europe fell in response to this. I was reading some stories about that yesterday. Markets falling. I believe there's been a feed on markets earlier that I just don't have it logged into our system here. Give me just a moment. And I'll show you guys the market feed. Okay. Speaking of tariffs, let's go out here. That's an ongoing fire. This is in Brazil. They are protesting the tariffs. Moments ago, it was an image, like a stuffed body of Donald Trump, and I'm assuming, and have been assuming here for the last little bit, that it was the Brazil leader. So that is what I have assumed for the last little bit. Let's see if we can get some audio. That's the audio that we are getting in right now, just chants, of course, not in a language that we are able to understand. But again, this is a protest in Brazil against the US tariffs. I believe Brazil's tariff, you guys are gonna do fact checking over here for a second. Brazil's tariff is 50%. That is one of the highest tariffs that we have seen so far. Let's go over to the stock market and where it stands right now. That's what we were talking about before. Let's see if we can. Give me 1 second. I've got to quickly change. There we go. Okay, now let's take you over to the stock market. As it appears, we have lost that feed. The Dow Jones is what you're looking at there, now down 550 points here as we are continuing to watch it react to tariffs. I'll tell you, it was just nearly 2 days ago when the Fed came out saying it would keep interest rates the same for the 5th time in a row here. That markets reacted in really an extremely negative way. The Dow was down 1,000 points, I believe so, at one point in the day. So as we begin this day on watching tariffs as they come about, down 558 points, we have lost our feeds to the protest that was ongoing. That was the last look that we had. It's frozen up. So we will continue to monitor that. We are going to sneak in yet another rake here. We've got much more to come, though. You're watching Brookland News Live. Welcome back into Brookland News Live. I'm Jackson Mitchell. A look on the right side of your screen. Florida officials continuing to hold this press conference on illegal immigration. Let's go live there and listen back in. Again, they've been speaking for the last little bit. We've heard a number of different officials. We pivoted there for just a moment, though, to listen into a few other things going on around the world here. So we are going to continue to listen in here for just a moment longer. Sorry, getting some things ready. Officials now speaking, and as I was going to go to it, sorry, technical difficulties. Okay, let's go live out there.
Cabinet to manage the operations, the day-to-day operations of the Florida Highway Patrol and other divisions of the department. And it is a huge honor to be standing with these men and women behind me, these state troopers. I know some of them personally. I don't know all 2,000 personally, but I know them to be just outstanding, motivated, incredibly hardworking, diligent law enforcement officers. And for me, it has been a blessing of a lifetime to watch this agency get the full value and the full potential under Governor DeSantis' leadership. And these guys are out here kicking butt and they're taking names. I'm born and raised in Florida, and so I've always been a fan of Florida Highway Patrol. But I always thought that if they had the right leadership, they could do so much more for the men and women in this state and our residents. And so under the governor's leadership, we've really seen this agency take on incredibly challenging situations and missions and execute just perfectly on it. So it's such an honor to be here with each and every one of you. And you have our deepest respects for what you guys do each day, day in and day out. And to our members of the cabinet, to the Attorney General, these troopers see your leadership. They see the way that you're fighting in the court of law for their rights, for their ability to enforce the law. It does not go unnoticed. Chief Financial Officer Blaise Ngoli, you blazed right in, and you've done a hell of a job. Well, you've been here a couple of weeks, and you already have your law enforcement officers getting with ours and getting ready to get to work, doing incredible things. We're excited to have you here on the state of Florida team, on the executive branch, and to the commissioner. Just like with Florida Highway Patrol, sir, I've seen a transformation in your men and women in uniform since you took over. I mean, it must have been a rough couple of years in the last administration, but we've seen what's happened. It's night and day, and we see it. Colonel Howes and our troopers see you all out there on the interstates doing the Lord's work, and we're thankful for your service, and we know that you're risking your lives, and you're right here on the same team. And so it's incredible to see all of our state law enforcement really just have incredible value to this state. Our immigration enforcement section is going to be, I think, first in the nation. I don't think any other state is doing what the state of Florida is doing. And so this unit will be specifically, even though we have 2,000 troopers already out there doing the Lord's work, this unit will be 24/7 coordinating, deconflicting. We're about to have hundreds, if not thousands, of sheriff's deputies and police department officers coming online. This unit will be responsible for coordinating with the federal government and making sure we're maximizing our utility as law enforcement officers to apprehend and deport illegal immigrants. And before this press conference started, we had a chance to huddle up with the governor, and the governor said, you know, say whatever it is you need to say to the public. He kind of took the chains off, as he's known for doing. And so the first thing I wanted to say, which isn't on the script, is Colonel Howes and I and the Florida Highway Patrol had an opportunity to have an awards banquet for the Florida Highway Patrol, where we recognize all the troopers doing a great job. But there was a representative from the Department of Homeland Security that showed up and wanted to make sure that we honored the Florida Highway Patrol. So what I had the honor of receiving on behalf of the Florida Highway Patrol was the first ever Secretary's Commendation given to the Florida Highway Patrol, issued by the Secretary of Homeland Security. This is representative of many things. It's a beautiful certificate, but it's so much more than that. And I want to talk about something that's going down right now in Palm Beach County, and I want to address it head on because the public deserves to know, and quite frankly, candor and being transparent is an important part of leading a law enforcement agency. What this certificate represents is first in the nation 287G, first in the nation to arrest under 287G, almost 3,000 arrests, and the Department of Homeland Security is recognizing them. But each one of those arrests is a story. And right now there was an arrest that happened in Palm Beach County a couple of months ago, rather, and the press has run with it from a false narrative, and they're trying to change the history. So I want to address it head on. And I want to talk about a larger issue just very briefly. So these are the facts. This is what happened. A traffic stop happened by the Florida Highway Patrol. They had reasonable suspicion that there were undocumented immigrants in the vehicle. We called for Border Patrol's assistance, as we always do. We always work with our federal partners. It was determined that 2 of the occupants were here unlawfully. Border Patrol directed us to take them into custody. What happens thereafter is that a U.S. citizen starts to interfere and obstruct the investigation by slamming the door shut and locking the doors so that the troopers and the Border Patrol cannot access these undocumented aliens and bring them into custody. Of course, the troopers did exactly what they're supposed to do. They arrested that U.S. citizen for obstruction of justice under 843.02 Florida state statutes. Time goes on. In fact, the resistance was so severe, by the way, that the Border Patrol had to use a taser on one of the subjects. Time goes on. The suspect that we arrested, who's a U.S. citizen, went through the court system as he should. He pled to the misdemeanor charge of resisting. He agreed to anger management, for one, and community service, and pled out on the misdemeanor charge. And what has transpired since then, I guess because the media has made a debacle of this, saying that it was a miscarriage of justice, is that the prosecutor in Palm Beach County unilaterally, after this plea was done, okay, this plea is signed by the state attorney, it's signed by the defendant, it's signed by the attorney for the defendant, and when I say it's signed by the state attorney, it's the assistant state attorney, the prosecutor, and they all agreed this is what happened and this is what the punishment should be. And I'm speaking as a former prosecutor. This is what due process looks like, and a defendant doesn't plead to a criminal charge unless they're aware that they've done it and they should pay the price. So what happens is the press comes out and calls it a miscarriage of justice, and unilaterally, now several months later after this arrest, the prosecutor in Palm Beach County goes and tears this agreement up and dismisses the charges and says he doesn't have to be held accountable. That is a miscarriage of justice. What this represents to me is an experience that I had recently in Tampa, where one of our sergeant troopers was doing the Lord's work. I was actually out on that operation. He pulled a vehicle over, and 12 illegal immigrants fled across I-4, and he went and chased them and had to jump over a wall and ended up demolishing his leg. And he's gone through 3 surgeries already, and he's out of work. He's obviously on leave. But he's been seriously injured because these folks resisted arrest. And this person resisted arrest and caused the Border Patrol to have to use a taser to get these people into custody. And the law applies equally whether you're here legally, whether you're a U.S. citizen, or whether you're here illegally. And for a prosecutor, which my only assumption, the only inference that I can draw that they canceled this, that they dropped this charge after a plea, which I've never heard of happening, is because it involved illegal immigration. And I hear politicians say just the craziest things about what happened and how we can do better as a country. No, the prosecutor can do better. The prosecutor cannot encourage people resisting arrest. These men and women have a right to conduct their investigations in a peaceful environment. And when people obstruct or interfere with that process, it's not just the state troopers and our ag officers and deputy sheriffs that get hurt. Other people get hurt too. And so this is a miscarriage of justice, and I'm delighted to be able to talk about this in front of the governor and our attorney general and our cabinet. And this is happening simultaneously, by the way. I got a call from the chief of police of West Palm Beach, Tony Araujo, and he called me, he said, "Dave, you won't believe what just happened, who we just arrested." It was the 2 illegal immigrants that raped a 7-year-old repeatedly, I think over 12 times, and also mentioned to me that they used a belt to discipline her because she was acting out. And so I think in the state of Florida, the governor's made it pretty clear that this is a law and order state. And this may be a one-off where you're telling the public that it's okay to resist when immigration is involved, and it's not. And if this continues, it's certainly above my pay grade. But I do not think it's going to end well for that prosecutor. I think she should be focused on obtaining the death penalty sentence for these two illegal aliens that raped a 7-year-old repeatedly. I think that's what she should be focusing her time on. Last thing I'll say, Governor, and this is an honest, true story. Last night I was driving home. I was thinking about this press conference, and the song Write This Down came on by George Strait. And you had mentioned earlier, write this down, about the pay raises for these troopers and these officers. So I wrote it down, right out of George Strait. And what you've done and what these leaders have done, what the legislature in this last session has done, is monumental. I know there's a desire to go further. Whether that happens or not, I know that I speak on behalf of Colonel Howes and these state troopers that we will always be honored to engage in these missions that we're assigned, and we'll do it with diligence and integrity. Thank you, Governor.
Alrighty, so we have been listening in there to a press conference from officials in Florida. We will continue to do exactly that and monitor it. Quick break. The coverage continues in a moment. And welcome back into Brooklyn News Live. It is Thursday, 9:58 here. A look at the 4 astronauts set to take it up to the ISS. That's happening next hour, really. Here in about 46 minutes or so. So sometime next hour, we will be watching this takeoff, possibly. The weather set to play maybe a role in the cancellation of this. It's unclear yet. It has not, the mission, again, has not been canceled yet, but the weather has been playing a role in this. You see the two anchors there speaking on this mission. Let's turn it up.
And we'll check in with Ronnie on the status of today's countdown.
Thanks so much, Joseph. So we are coming up on just under 46 minutes to launch, and our teams are carefully moving through our pre-flight process. Next up in the countdown...
Okay, so they're just giving a breakdown as to where things are going to go. Next, we will continue to monitor that event. Okay, we've been talking about it all day today since we came on the air earlier. Tariffs going into effect a little earlier in the day. Let's take you over to where things stand with the Dow Jones. Negative, I don't know, nearly 600 points. We're continuing to watch that as the day goes on, and we'll do that throughout the evening, really. So we'll monitor it as it happens. Another story we've been following is this NTSB hearing on the deadly DC collision. This is now day 3 of the hearing. What we're going to do here, we're going to listen in for a little bit. Listen into some testimony by these panels that have been speaking for the last little bit. When news happens, we'll break in and bring it to you again. So, a new hour of Brooklanders Live has just began. Let's listen into this.
Symbology and the different resolution and advisories and traffic advisories.
Sure.
That would be 9 Air G.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to provide a presentation on Airborne Traffic Alert and Collision Avoidance System, or TCAS. At the outset, I want to state that Collins Aerospace is dedicated to continuing to help advance aviation safety and is committed to assisting the NTSB with their investigative process. Next slide, please. So TCAS provides a backup separation assurance service secondary to air traffic control. TCAS's operation is specified by Technical Standard Order, or TSO, which is a performance standard defined by the FAA. The TCAS incorporates minimum operational performance standards that we refer to as MOPS, which provide detailed requirements as to the design and operation of TCAS. These MOPS were developed by the RTCA, which is a public-private partnership made up of various government and industry stakeholders to develop consensus standards. While developed by these stakeholders, the MOPS are ultimately approved by the FAA, and in this case, for the incident aircraft, TSO C119B. When a company like Collins develops a TCAS, it is required to implement the MOPS to ensure that its TCAS functions consistently and is interoperable across aircraft and airspace. The main function of TCAS is to track nearby aircraft and issue traffic advisories and resolution advisories. Traffic advisories, or TAs, provide situational awareness of nearby aircraft. Resolution advisories, or RAs, provide recommended maneuvers to increase or maintain separation from other aircraft. To provide TAs and RAs, TCAS obtains information from neighboring aircraft and analyzes that information based on its own internal collision avoidance logic. So first, a TCAS on the own aircraft would transmit an interrogation to another aircraft. And then that TCAS would receive a response from the other aircraft. So first, a TCAS on the own aircraft would transmit an interrogation to another aircraft. And then that TCAS would receive a response from the other aircraft via that aircraft's transponder. Based on this response, TCAS calculates the range to and relative altitude of the other aircraft. TCAS also receives bearing information to the other aircraft through the own aircraft's directional antenna. Next slide, please. So TCAS then analyzes this information about other aircraft's range and altitude to determine whether the other aircraft will invade the protected area around the own aircraft within a prescribed period. TCAS repeats this analysis every second. These protected areas are represented by the purple and green rings on this slide. Purple represents the threshold area for traffic advisories, and green represents the threshold area for resolution advisories. Next slide, please. In addition to providing TAs and RAs, the TCAS system includes a traffic display. On the CRJ 700, this display appears on the multifunction display. To be clear, the display on this slide is just an example. It is not reflective of any of the display or data related to this incident. The pilots can set the range of the display to either 5, 10, 20, or 40 nautical miles. Further away aircraft appear as empty blue diamonds. As aircraft get within 6 nautical miles and 1,200 feet, the blue diamond will fill in. This is a visual tool for the pilots to indicate the aircraft is getting closer. On this slide, the aircraft represented by the unfilled blue diamond has a +10 next to it. That means 1,000 feet altitude difference, and the plus means the aircraft is above the own aircraft. The aircraft represented by the filled-in blue diamond is marked with -10, meaning that that aircraft is 1,000 feet below the own aircraft. The down arrow indicates that the aircraft is descending by greater than 500 feet per minute. The aircraft with the yellow circle is subject to a traffic advisory. The notation next to it, minus 02, means, and an up arrow, means that the aircraft is 200 feet below the own aircraft and is climbing at a rate greater than 500 feet per minute. And then finally, the aircraft marked by the red square is subject to a resolution advisory. This aircraft has a +2 next to it, meaning that it is 200 feet above the own aircraft. Next slide, please. The traffic display that I just showed would appear on the multifunction display. However, the TAs and the RAs also appear on the primary flight display. This is an example of a TA on the primary flight display. Notice that in the bottom right corner, the word traffic appears in yellow. This indicates a traffic advisory. In addition, a traffic advisory will generally be accompanied by an oral alert that states the words traffic, traffic. Next slide, please. And here is an example of an RA on the primary flight display. Again, I would like to direct your attention to the bottom right corner. You see the word traffic in red indicates a resolution advisory. In addition, a red indicator arc and a green arc will appear on the vertical speed indicator. This indicates the pilot should adjust pitch to place the vertical speed indicator on the green arc. A resolution advisory will also be accompanied by an oral alert directing the pilot what resolution action to take. Next slide, please.
Okay, we will continue to listen into that. I know it's a little bit not so, this presentation on exactly how aviation works isn't so attentive. Something you really want to be listening into. So let's go back over to this event we've been watching for the last little bit in Florida, this press conference on illegal immigration enforcement.
So now, these strike teams that you're talking about with this new unit is going to have on it sheriff deputies that nobody knows their counties like a sheriff. You're going to have other state law enforcement agencies. You're going to have the highway patrol folks. Now that the detention capacity, the work that you've done and that you all have done on the detention capacity, we're no longer capped at that, where we're having to modulate and kind of tone down the effort that we're applying. So I think it's going to skyrocket. It's going to take off. Now, whenever I make remarks about what my overall view is of the find, sort, detain, deport process, much of the amazing credit goes to Kevin Guthrie, the Division of Emergency Management, the Florida National Guard, for increasing this detention capacity. That's fundamental, that's key and essential. And Kevin Guthrie, the Director of Emergency Management that everybody knows from hurricanes and all that, and his work on Alligator Alcatraz, is due credit. And he is amazing. He is an international star in the setting of making things happen in mass and scale. Well, so are these folks, in your organization and this leadership right now. So you all created the blueprint, initial blueprint of how a law and order state fights the battle. Governor, you commissioned and sent out the Florida Blueprint 1.0 back in May that had in it this thing that is now Alligator Alcatraz. The blueprint of how you do this, how state and local help the federal government accomplish the mass immigration enforcement mission. So this organization and your organization, we're ready for 2.0. Once you give us the green light, we're ready to talk about 2.0 because the situation is fluid, it's adapted, we've learned lots of lessons, and we are ready to have Blueprint 2.0 of how you do this, how you scale this. And as the president said after 2 weeks ago, Florida, great job, you've crushed it. Now go forth and help us show these other states how to do it. We're ready to do it.
Okay. Well, thanks again for everybody that's been involved. I mean, I know we got a lot more work to do, but if you compare Florida to other states in terms of who's taken this really seriously, and not just with rhetoric, but with action, we're second to none. You know, as usual on a lot of the stuff, we're happy to step up and get things done. So we've done a lot. These guys behind me have done a lot. FHP's done a lot, but there is a lot more to do. I'd also just remind people that today is the start of our back to school sales tax free month of August now. So every August in Florida, we made it permanent. You'll have the entire month of August to stock up on those school supplies. And incidentally, yesterday we were, I was home in the afternoon after come back from the office, And my wife's like, yeah, I'm gonna go do school shopping. The kids are gonna probably want me to come. I'm like, no, you're not. She's like, what? I'm like, you can't shop for school on July 31st when we have the August 1st. Oh, you're right. And so she's gonna be, we're gonna be doing that in the next few days. But you know, we're at the point in the summer. So our kids get out Memorial Day. I know a lot of schools do. Some go a little later. And it's like, okay, school year done, have a little fun. And then they do activities in the summer, different types of camps, whatever. Well, now we're kind of at the point where the mom and dad are like, when does school start again? Can we get that going? So that's coming up in a couple weeks. And, you know, we're going to be, you know, happy that will happen. There's other things that you may miss a little bit over the summer, but, you know, after the first month, fine. After the second month, it's like, all right, we've got to get going back into the routine here. So we're both of us are cautiously looking forward to the beginning of the school year. And then just, you know, they mentioned Kevin Guthrie. I would just, you know, remind people, you know, we are in hurricane season. If you look like at the Atlantic now, there's not much going on. A lot of people are saying, because, you know, the media says every time it's going to be the worst ever, right? And so a lot of people, you know, they hate when that stuff happens because, you know, the media said 30 years ago Florida would be completely underwater by now, right, because of global warming. I mean, like, so you see this stuff. So I think there's a natural reaction because people are, you know, if they see someone trying to scare them, they're just going to say, so like people are now looking, oh, it's been uneventful, whatever. But we're just now getting into where you would have more rapid a chance of this happening as you get into mid-August. So it looks pretty clear for the immediate future, but as you start to get into mid-August, and then September is always very difficult, and then the beginning of October as well, you can have a quiet hurricane season until it's not. And if you go back to 2022, you know, at this point we're like, yeah, it's been quiet. Just keep to yourself. August was quiet in 2022. Then we get into the first week of September, nothing. The second week of September. And then people really started chirping, nothing to see. And I knew as soon as that started happening, I just felt like, okay, buckle up. And then sure enough, the end of September, we got Hurricane Ian, which was, you know, one of the biggest hurricanes that we've had in this country in the last 10 years. So we don't know that, and you can have a very modest or even weak overall season, but it only takes one to impact communities. And so, yes, we haven't had much. I know it's been very hot. We haven't had much in the way of that activity relative to maybe what some of the predictions were thus far, but we are far from prime time for this. It's kind of like, you know, maybe being in like the third inning. So just continue to do whatever. The back to school holiday is great for August. Disaster supplies are now permanently tax-free, so you can still do that. You've got plenty of time to do that, and hopefully you won't need it. Hopefully you guys won't see people like Kevin Guthrie on your TV a lot throughout the balance of this hurricane season, but we obviously plan and are ready to act if need be. Okay, do we got any questions? Well, I mean, look, we have laws in Florida. I fought very hard. The Attorney General was our chief of staff then, and he was fighting very hard to say that we have to impose a duty, an enforceable duty on states and you didn't need to do it on the state, but we wanted to because I was going to do it anyway. But on the localities to participate with this effort, because if you didn't do it, you would obviously have a lot that wouldn't do it. So that's just the obligations that have been provided under law. And we expect everybody to fulfill their obligations under law, and both the Florida Constitution provides me, but then that legislation also provided supplemental authority so that the governor can ensure enforcement and that those duties are upheld. And I won't hesitate to do it, but I would just tell people, because I get like not everybody wants to see immigration laws enforced. Not everybody wants to see illegal aliens removed. Most do, and when you see that happen, and then you see, you know, less traffic problems, less stress on healthcare and schools, people really are appreciative when that happens. But I know that's not 100%. But the reality is we had that debate in Florida. I had to fight a couple leaders of my own party in the House to get where we are, but we landed it. And now that's the law, and so just follow it, and I think you're going to find that that's going to be the best way forward for everybody.
Would you have suspended him if he had not signed
if you don't meet your obligations under the law, if you don't fulfill the duties that have been imposed upon you, you absolutely will be suspended. Now, I know the Attorney General wrote him a letter, all this stuff. You know, the reality is I just want to get it right. I just want to land the plane right. And so I'm glad it worked out that way. But this is just something that we're watching. And, you know, Dave Kerner brought up Palm Beach County State Attorney and what may have happened on this thing. I just know we watch those things too. Now, I don't just shoot from the hip. I mean, people build a record and that people can present a record to me, and I look to make sure that our duties are there, because we know people are going to sue off this and try to drag it up in court, although we won the suit that we did in Tampa when we had that, and eventually were able to settle that fine. But that's just what happens. So, but on the prosecutors, you have an obligation to uphold the law and enforce the law. And while an individual case, you know, there's judgment calls that can be made, you know, you can't have a policy that has the effect of kneecapping what the people have enacted through the legislature, because that puts the public at risk, and we don't want to see that happen. And I was speaking to the sheriffs the other day. You know, we've seen in like California where you can go in and steal $950, and the threshold is a little higher than that, and they raise this threshold. So you see massive crime wave. You've seen jailbreak legislation in some of these states. Like, none of that is going to work. I've obviously opposed that very strongly in terms of legislative, even though you've had people that have tried to do that in Florida. But you certainly can't do that through the back door. Like, you didn't get the jailbreak legislation passed. You didn't get some of the California-style policies enacted. So you're just going to do it anyways, unilaterally? No, that doesn't work.
Governor, can we get your reaction on the ICE recruitment letter for our deputies and police officers that went out?
So I haven't seen the letter, but apparently ICE sent out a recruitment letter to, you know, a lot of people that are 287G qualified that are working in local agencies in Florida and even some state agencies, and are dangling like a lot of bonus money and all this other stuff. And I know some sheriffs have had concerns, you know, that's happening. It's like, hey, we've been doing all this stuff to help you guys, and now you're trying to poach our people who are already in the fight. Why not recruit additional people to be supplementing that instead of just kind of displacing? So I know a lot of sheriffs have had concerns about it. I think maybe some police chiefs. So I would just say, stay tuned on kind of them. I mean, that's really something that's going to impact them more than probably us at the state level. And I know that there's some sheriffs that have some strong feelings about it.
Governor, I know you encourage and required sheriffs to sign this 287G agreement and to get these deputies trained to have immigration enforcement authority. Now this is happening. What would you say to those law enforcement leaders that trusted you and the state to sign this agreement, and now they're concerned about their deputies being poached?
Well, I think that's the conundrum, right? Because we've gone above and beyond as a state. All these sheriff's departments and many police departments have done these agreements. They have folks that have now been certified or in the process still of doing that. And that's been a huge help to ICE, right? Let's just be clear. That's been a huge benefit to those federal agencies. And so now if you're in a situation where those folks are being poached off of that mission, well, it's like, wait a minute, how is that? Why don't you bring in new people to supplement the mission going forward? So I understand the concern. I mean, 100%. I think we've done the right thing. I think we want to continue doing what we're doing. But, you know, sheriffs losing deputies who are in this fight to just go to wear a different jersey basically, but still be in the fight, that doesn't necessarily add to what we're doing. It's just moving someone over. And so I think there is frustration from that. And so we'll see. But you're going to continue to hear folks talk about this. I know when that letter hit, I heard a lot of static coming out of our sheriff's departments about that. And I told them, I said, listen, you know, you guys got to defend your agencies and your people. I mean, you say fight for what you think is right. I mean, this isn't my policy. It's coming down from ICE, and so by all means, speak up.
Governor, on the back and forth with Orange County for the last week or so, one of the issues that they have brought up is that the transporting costs would be that they would have to pay it. In your view, should counties who participate? So
if you look at the Florida, the bill that we got into law, there is money through our immigration folks where they can apply for reimbursement. So you do that likely through the sheriff, right, Larry, with the jail and transportation costs. Yes, sir. They can get it reimbursed. We can issue the grants and do that. So I would just tell them to do it. Yes, when I was doing this, I had pushed back. I mean, obviously the Speaker of the House opposed what I was putting forth. And one of the things people were saying was, well, this is like an unfunded mandate. I was like, no, it's not going to be unfunded. We will have an ability for you to get resources. And so I think the detention, transport, I mean, that's something that would be appropriate to do. And I know we approved the guidelines for the grants to go out. And so I would just encourage to go talk to Larry, apply for that. But we want to get the funding out the door for the localities. I think that's really important. I think that they'll use it well, and it'll enhance the mission.
You mentioned that there were other sites that could be opened in addition to Alligator Alcatraz and Camp Blanding as future detention sites. Did you have your eye on anywhere in particular?
Well, so Camp Blanding is up in Northeast Florida. It does have an air. It has a runway. I don't know that it would be as equivalent to Alligator Alcatraz because the runway is not as big. You may be able to move people right out of there, but you do have Cecil Field that's very close to that. So when we look at this, it's really what makes logistical sense. Again, I'm not creating the Four Seasons for illegal aliens. I'm not detaining just to detain. Like, that is not what we're doing it because there's a process involved for deport. Even the ones that have had the final order of removal, which is most of the people at Alligator Alcatraz, there still is some process that goes through that. So if it's detain, go through the process, and then be able to remove, that's something that we have an interest in being able to help facilitate to be able to increase those numbers. So I think Blanding would have the capacity to do a couple thousand. We initially were planning on just kind of opening that right away, but what I noticed as it was coming, DHS was sending people to South Florida, but we thought it'd be a little bit more, and then we waited for the flight, and the flights have started. So we want to get a sense of that cadence, I think, because yes, we're getting reimbursed for this, and so any of these people.
Alrighty, we will continue monitoring that, but we do have some breaking news in right now this hour. From Washington County, we want to take you out live to Northwest Arkansas near Springdale, where the suspect of the double homicide at Devil's Den State Park was caught. This is a camera there from Archer of Arkansas on the interstate. The news there is that there was no bond at this point in time for the suspect of the double homicide. Now, to bring you guys an update on this case, where it stands at this hour, James Andrew McGann, 28 of Springdale, was apprehended on Wednesday, facing 2 counts of capital murder. He is suspected of killing Clinton David Brink and Kristen Amanda Brink, the couple, while they were hiking with their 2 daughters at Devil's Den in West Fork, Arkansas. To bring you guys an update on this, all occurred on Saturday at the beginning of the week here. Then by Wednesday, the suspect was caught, but on Saturday, the ASP, the Arkansas State Police, receiving this report that there was a double homicide. Investigators have now said that the father was stabbed first, then the mother took the kids to safety, going back to assist the father. Then she was stabbed and killed both with a knife. So that is the news we're just getting in at this hour. Again, that is no bond for the Arkansas suspect of a double homicide. Police also say that when he was caught while getting his hair cut at a local barbershop in Springdale, Arkansas. It is said that he admitted to the killings of both of them. The motive of this still remains unknown. Police still investigating that part of it all. So many questions still unanswered, but the suspect, the police believe who is the suspect is now in custody. We will continue monitoring this story for you all. Brookland News Live continues after a short break. welcome back into Brookland News Live. I'm Jackson Mitchell. Expansion to come to the White House. So I've looked there at it. As we are learning, yesterday a release stated that an expansion would be coming. I want to read the release to you in full here. Stand by. We'll go to our video of this that we have of this proposed expansion. This letter that was released yesterday reads, for 150 years, presidents, administrations, and White House staff have longed for a large event space on the White House complex that can hold subsequently more guests than currently allowed. President Donald J. Trump has expressed his commitment to solving this problem on behalf of future administrations and the American people. The White House is one of the most beautiful and historic buildings in the world. Yet the White House is currently unable to host major functions honoring world leaders and other countries, there, without having to install a large and unsightly tent approximately 100 yards away from the main building entrance. The White House State Ballroom will be a much needed and exquisite addition of approximately 90,000 total square feet of innately designed and carefully crafted space with a seated capacity of 650 people. You see pictures of this proposed expansion there on your screen. We have video of Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt addressing this yesterday in the briefing room.
White House Ballroom will begin. For 150 years, presidents, administrations, and White House staff have longed for a large event space on the White House complex that can hold substantially more guests than currently allowed. President Trump has expressed his commitment to solving this problem on behalf of future administrations and the American people. The White House is one of the most beautiful and historic buildings in the world. Yet the White House is currently unable to host major functions, honoring world leaders in other countries without having to install a large and unsightly tent approximately 100 yards away from the main building's entrance. The White House State Ballroom will be a much-needed and exquisite addition of approximately 90,000 total square feet of innately designed and carefully crafted space with a seated capacity of 650 people, which is a significant increase from the 200-person seated capacity in the East Room of the White House. In recent weeks, President Trump has held several meetings with members of the White House staff, the National Park Service, the White House Military Office, and the United States Secret Service to discuss design features and planning. President Trump has chosen McCreary Architects as the lead architect, which is well known for their classical architectural design and based right here in our nation's capital. The construction team will be headed by Clark Construction, and the engineering team will be led by AECOM. The project will begin in September 2025, and it is expected to be completed long before the end of President Trump's term. President Trump and other donors have generously committed to donating the funds necessary to build this approximately $200 million structure. The United States Secret Service will provide the necessary security enhancements and modifications. The White House Ballroom will be substantially separated from the main building of the White House, but at the same time, its theme and architectural heritage will be almost identical. The site of the new ballroom will be where the small, heavily changed and reconstructed East Wing currently sits. The East Wing was constructed in 1902 and has been renovated and changed many times, with a second story added in 1942.
Secretary Caroline Leavitt there addressing the upcoming expansion to the White House. Okay, something we are going to continue to monitor this hour. We've got a lot of news still to come. A lot of things we're monitoring, and we'll continue to monitor here. The letter there on your screen. Give me just a moment. There we go. There's pictures of this proposed expansion showing kind of an added wing. We have the West Wing, we have the East Wing. This would be, I believe, on the west side of the White House. It's going to be an added wing, essentially. So that's something we are going to continue to watch at this hour. The Senate is. Give me 1 second. The Senate is in session at this hour. Let's head over there. Take to the Senate. They're voting on a few nominations. We're going to continue to watch it and monitor it as it progresses. A live look at the White House there. Visitors approaching North Lawn. Something we will continue to watch. Quick break. More to come. You're watching Brookland News Live. Welcome back into Brookland News Live, a live look in Washington, D.C., where the National Transportation Safety Board is holding a hearing for the third day now, on the crash that occurred in Washington, D.C. between a military Black Hawk helicopter and a regional jet. This occurred soon after President Donald Trump took office. Let's listen in here as people testify.
I believe the PSA crew would have been listening with bated breath to what happened next. The next transmission was going to tell them whether the threat was mitigated and not something that they could deprioritize, or whether a control instruction from ATC would be forthcoming that they would need to react to.
Okay. Thank you for that, and pass the questioning back to Captain Stone.
Thank you, Dr. Brimble. I'm going to turn briefly to training for PSA pilots. So, Captain Clow again. When do you do initial training about TCAS for your flight crews?
Yes, so TCAS is trained in initial training, upgrade training, and recurrent continuing qual training.
Okay. So one of the things that we heard from Mr. Grease is that there was a possibility that there may not have been a target associated with this traffic call, the traffic alert, traffic advisory from TCAS. Do PSA pilots know about the possibility of a no-bearing traffic alert or resolution advisory?
Excuse me. Yeah, so in our initial training, there's an instructor-led systems class, and the training materials covered in that systems class include a depiction of the multifunction display, where a no-bearing TA, how it would appear is indicated on that graphic.
And do you do any simulator training that shows a no-bearing TA or RA?
Yeah, unfortunately not. talking with the simulator engineers that manage our simulators and other airline simulators in the Charlotte Training Center, the simulator is unable to generate a no-bearing TA in order for us to train it in the simulator.
So with the amount of background that your crew had on the possibility of a no-bearing TA, if this was a no-bearing TA, what would that have caused as far as crew reaction? And maybe I might actually switch over to Dr. Kasner for this question. So now, they're getting a traffic alert oral, and they look down on the display, and there's no traffic that they can see. What kind of a human reaction is there to that situation?
Given the high workload of the situation, there's only so much time you could devote to that. I can imagine looking and not seeing anything egregious or imminent. I don't know what other choice there would be other than to return your attention to landing.
Okay. And back to Captain Clow, just one last question. Actually, two questions. How do PSA airline pilots become qualified to operate at Washington Reagan National Airport? Because it is what the FAA defines as a special qualification airport.
Yes, that is correct. DCA is a special qual airport. All PSA pilots qualify themselves to operate into and out of DCA via pictorial means, which is a FAA-approved method of doing that special qualifications training. I mean, obviously, if there's opportunities for pilots to transition through DCA on their initial operating experience training with the Check-M, that's obviously a good thing, but it's not required. And I'd also like to state that we provide, think of it like a consolidated playbook of DCA-related guidance that we extract from all the different manuals and resources that we have as like an orientation guide for both new pilots and pilots that maybe have recently upgraded or have been away for a while to kind of refamiliarize themselves with information specific to DCA.
So regarding that, does any of that information that you just described contain any information about helicopter operations or helicopter routes in the DC area?
At the time of the accident, it did not.
Okay. Do you think it's important for pilots to know about the prevalence of helicopter operations and specifically what their potential routes are?
Again, hearing the expert testimony, Dr. Kastner again saying that kind of knowledge would be useful. I think it's certainly something that should be looked at. I don't think it's very simple to decide where to put that information. There are a ton of reference information already for DCA, and for example,
alrighty, I want to interrupt here and turn to another story we're following right now. That is over here with NASA and SpaceX. They are launching a flight to the International Space Station with astronauts from Japan, Russia, and the US. So we are going to turn this audio up
normal and expected,
just a little bit so we can listen in for just a second as we are T-minus 2 minutes here.
pounds of propellant loaded onto Falcon 9, which will be RP-1 and liquid oxygen. So that call out coming up.
Stage 2 lock sled complete.
Right there.
So we just heard that confirmation of stage 2 liquid oxygen now complete, as we are now 1 minute and 50 seconds away from launch. We'll also hear that the gas closeouts have started, so we can expect loud venting.
Auto idle.
You heard the call for auto idle. That puts the rocket in a state that the flight computers understand before it takes over, making sure that transition to the final countdown is smooth and that all flight computers on board are in sync
Ground gas
and configured.
closeouts. Expect loud venting.
Configured for launch, and there's the closeouts we've been talking about and the venting that will be shortly followed. One minute and 10 seconds to liftoff of NASA SpaceX Crew 11.
FTS is armed. Falcon 9 is in startup and is now controlling.
Dragon is in countdown.
Flight computers switching to countdown mode now.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
SpaceX, Dragon, go for launch.
Alrighty, this is the moment that we have been waiting for, the moment that we are now 30 seconds away from launching. Let's continue listening into the radio and the anchors here kind of telling us where we're going.
$15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Ignition's full power and liftoff. Go Falcon, go NASA, go Crew 11.
Together we rise as NASA's SpaceX Crew 11 heads up to the International Space Station.
Vehicles pitching down range.
1.7 million pounds
Stage
of
1
thrust.
propulsion is nominal.
Propelling Falcon 9 as the vehicle pitching down range and making its way up the East Coast, and will soon join Expedition 73 aboard the orbiting laboratory. So far, getting good callouts on that first stage performance.
We are now T plus 35 seconds into the Crew 11 mission on board Dragon and Falcon 9. The Falcon 9 engines
Stage 1 throttle down.
Are throttling down to help
Power and telemetry are nominal.
to help pass through the period of max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle during ascent.
Max Q.
We just had max Q right there.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
1 minute, 9 seconds into what is a little bit more less than a 9-minute flight uphill as Dragon continuing.
Stage 1 Bravo.
Copy. 1 Bravo.
And that 1 Bravo, again, that's the abort zone, that last abort zone for stage 1 if necessary. The crew already pulling over 2 Gs. And next, we're going to have a couple of events happen in rapid succession. We'll be getting ready for the second stage to warm up and have the second stage MVAC chill. And then we'll also have MECA, or main engine cutoff, where the 9 engines on the first stage will cut off ahead of the first and second stages. Will then be separating from one another. And then the single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will ignite and continue to carry Crew 11 to orbit, while the first stage begins its journey back to Earth, as we're now 1 minute and 56 seconds into today's flight.
The 9 Merlin engines are starting to throttle down and are standing by for MECA, or main engine cutoff.
MVAC chill has started.
And we just heard that call out for MVAC chill. And coming up in under like 20 seconds, we have 5 events happening back to back. MECA,
Stage 1 throttle down.
stage separation, stage 1 flip, SES1, and the start of boost back burn. It's going to be pretty quick, so keep a close eye on the action and the mission event
Main engine cutoff.
tracker at the bottom of your screen.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage 2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed.
2 Alpha. MVAC ignition.
And there you see stage 1 pulling away, ignition of the lone Merlin vacuum engine for stage 2. And again, those happening in quick succession as we continue to get great views of that Florida coastline and the eastern seaboard there, as Crew 11 continuing its path to orbit, now approaching 3 minutes into today's flight. Still a little ways to go, about 6 minutes left, as they continue to climb their way up and eventually track down the International Space Station. And there, great to see, you see the Merlin vacuum engine, the second stage on the right-hand side, and great views of the first stage that's making its return to Earth on the left. About 5.5 minutes of powered flight remaining as we continue to monitor the progress of both vehicles, Stage 2 and Crew 11, making the climb uphill, and Stage 1 looking to land again at Landing Zone 1, the last landing at that location for this Falcon 9 booster.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Dragon copies.
We're continuing to hear great call outs over the nets that both Dragon and Falcon are right on track to orbit. So the first stage booster is now on its way to Landing Zone 1, and we just saw those grid fins open up on the left-hand side of your screen. The first stage has a couple events ahead of its landing. Stage 1 will start its entry burn, which will be the second of 3 burns to return the booster a few miles from its launch site at Landing Zone 1. During this entry burn, Falcon 9 will use its engines to pump the brakes to slow the vehicle down before it reaches the denser parts of the Earth's atmosphere. And if you didn't know, Falcon 9 has a complex heat shield that is designed to protect the engines and the vehicle from all of that combined thermal and aerodynamic loading during max entry Q, which is the moment of max stress on the vehicle during entry. And that will be followed by a landing burn. And this burn will last for about...
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Continuing to hear good call-outs.
Great performance calls continue as we're now 5 minutes into today's flight. Still about 8.5 to go. A little bit more than that as the second stage continuing to perform nominally on the right-hand side. 2,400 meters per second. Crew 11 cruising into the upper echelons of the Earth's atmosphere while we continue to monitor the second stage on that left-hand side. And we'll also get continued guidance and navigation call-outs from the control officers here in SpaceX. Dragon is pointed in the right direction and continuing its flight. And again, that second stage going to continue firing until close to that 9-minute mark into flight and accelerating Dragon to more than 17,000 miles per hour and placing the crew in orbit. And you'll hear good orbital insertion would be that call out. There's the single Merlin vacuum engine that can produce over 220,000
SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
pounds of thrust on that nominal trajectory you're hearing right now.
Copies.
And into the vacuum of space. Now approaching 6 minutes into today's flight, about 2 minutes and 40 plus seconds remaining.
We are coming up on the entry burn, which is just under 30 seconds from now. And so you'll see the first stage's center Merlin engine reignite as it comes back down to Earth. And after that, we will be approaching.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And there's the beginning of entry burn right there. Again, this is the second of 3 burns to return the booster to
Stage
Landing
1
Zone
entry
1.
burn shutdown.
We just made it through entry burn.
And you're getting some great views, too, on that Stage 1's return to the Florida coastline. Again, landing at Landing Zone 1. While on the right-hand side, the second stage. And that Merlin vacuum engine continuing to propel Crew 11.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Into orbit. And
Dragon copies.
And again, great. And now with about 2 minutes left of powered flight remaining, still receiving those great calls from the crew on the ground, and we're getting those relays from Crew 11 Commander Zena Cardin.
Stage 1 transonic.
We are now very quickly approaching the start of our landing burn, where 3 engines, engines 1, 5, and 9, will relight to help slow the vehicle down just before it touches down on Landing Zone 1. We should hopefully have some great tracking shots of that.
Stage 1 landing burn. Stage 2 FTS is saved. Stage 1 landing leg deployed.
A fantastic return there of the Stage 1 booster.
Rest time, completing our final planned landing at LV.
Another
So a successful landing of the first stage booster as we continue to follow along with a little less now than 1 minute of powered flight of the second stage. And you'll hear the call out SECO, or second engine cutoff. Is great view there, glowing orange with the Earth eclipsing right around that Merlin vacuum engine, and everything continuing to perform nominally for NASA
Stage 2
SpaceX
is
Crew
in
11.
terminal guidance.
About 20 more seconds remaining of powered flight, and we'll get those call-outs here shortly as everything continuing.
Shannon.
Copy, Shannon.
And there's the great call-out for Shannon we talked about earlier, that last abort zone, if necessary, where they can land off the coast of Shannon, Ireland.
Seco.
There we just heard that good call out for SECO, or second engine cutoff. Coming up next will be stage separation.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
And that's the great call you want to hear. A good look inside the trunk there as you're looking for that separation, but you wanted to hear that nominal orbital insertion as Crew 11 now has reached microgravity.
So now we'll continue to coast for a little bit after SECO to allow rates and motion from the burn to settle out. Right now we have a great view on our screen of the Dragon heat shield, actually, which is made up of similar materials. And there we have that Dragon and stage 2 separation as we see Dragon coast into its orbit.
And a wonderful view there is Dragon Endeavour with Crew 11 on board. Safe.
Dragon separation confirmed.
And safe and...
Dragon, Chief Engineer on Dragon to ground. Xena, Mike, Kimya, Oleg, welcome to orbit. On behalf of the entire Falcon team, we thank you for flying with Falcon today and wish you a great mission. Dragon will take you from here. Over to Launch Director for a few words.
Alrighty, we have been watching for the last little bit this launch here by SpaceX and NASA. 4 astronauts from Japan, Russia, and the US to the International Space Station. You see them there pointing at the camera with a heart and a thumbs up as we have just lost that shot. The crew's separating, and now they're in their kind of where they're heading to the International Space Station. They're getting closer here.
Be back in orbit again. Thank you to SpaceX and NASA to get us here. What a ride. And Xena and Oleg, let me be the second to welcome you to your first orbit around beautiful planet Earth. Kimya-san, okayeri nasai. Welcome back. And to the ISS Expedition 73 team, the crew on board and our friends in MCC, we're on our way. Over to you, Kimya-san.
Okay, thank you very much for everything. スパシバワンご一緒へありがとうございます。日本の皆さん、私も10年ぶりに宇宙に帰ってきました。ISS でしっかりと任務を果たして、一等星のように。
Alrighty, so what we're going to do, we're going to continue to monitor this event as we approach a new hour, though we are going to take a quick break. More to come right here on Brookland News Live.
job, Tremaine. Thank you so much. We'll get out our fifth crew member here in just a moment. This VRG indicator honors a shared memory with our lead trainer, Paul Weiss. For all the mentors and team members who got us here through sacrifice of time and dedication, I hope we made you proud today. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we've been watching SpaceX and NASA for the last little bit, launching their flight to...
Some great words there from all 4 members of Crew 11 and the astronauts and cosmonauts, all that cadre. They're well on their way to the final destination, which they have about a 16-hour ride to do so, and the phasing to ultimately the International Space Station, where they will turn that group into a full group of 11. So only fitting for Crew 11.
To summarize where we are with vehicle activation, we've had nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts. We're currently opening the nose cone.
We have just gotten confirmation that nose cone...
Tracking copies all, and we'll be ready for visors open with ECOS activation complete.
We just had great comms that nose cone deploy is underway. The 6 hooks that hold the nose cone in place during the launch and ascent portions have to retract, and then the nose cone will be able to start to swing open and deploy. This uncovers a number of critical systems for the flight up to the space station, including the forward bulkhead thrusters and the docking hatch. And that call from the Corps here in Hawthorne indicating that we had good checkouts of the 12 Draco thrusters around the service section. 4 to go after we get the nose cone open and the ECLIS, the Environmental Control and Life Support System, activated inside Dragon. Soon the crew will be able to get their visors open and get out of their suits and settle in for their ride to the space station.
And we'll continue to get those call outs and hear about the nose cone again right now.
Okay, so we are going to, of course, monitor this as it goes on there. Just watch their Falcon rocket make its way to the International Space Station. There's 4 rockets from Russia, the US, and Japan. We will monitor that, of course. Again, the SpaceX and NASA launching this. Okay, this National Transportation Safety Board appears to be meeting once again. That's one of the feeds we're monitoring at this hour. Another big story over in Texas redistricting. It has been such a big story that we followed. They've been taking up witnesses, kind of, and hearing their opinions on redistricting in Texas. We are going to monitor that scene there, and we'll see where things go. So we are going to listen in, though, I believe, though, to this one right, what we're watching right here, the congressional hearing on redistricting. This is in the Texas House of Representatives. I know, like, sometimes when we're watching these political events, it gets a little not newsworthy. It gets a little, like, I don't know, hard for some people to watch. If that happens, we will cut out of it and move on to another story. So, usually how I do it is my attention span's very small. So if I begin to lose interest in a story, I mean this in a way to say, like, if it's of course interesting still to you as to what's going on, because I know, like, before we were watching it, they were talking about an aviation slideshow, and it was something that the average person would not necessarily understand what was happening, what was going on. We're going to listen in here, though, and we'll see where things go.
Of the governor. Now, what the letter has to do with it, I got no personal knowledge. I have no knowledge. And I will tell you, I don't know what that has to do with this. That wasn't part of me. All I know is we had a special session call, and this was a topic, and I agreed by the request of the chairman to file this bill.
Great. And so, based on what you just said, in summary, in light of the governor's call, and I think you've already stated, based on statutory and constitutional authority, do you agree that the legislature and this committee have the absolute right and authority to consider congressional redistricting at this time?
Absolutely. And as I said, there's no requirement that you have to do it at a certain time. In fact, if you look historically, members, it's not always been at a certain time. The problem that we have is some people like it and some people don't. And that's the nature of redistricting.
All right. And I want to talk about the legal side of this for a second and talk about the analysis and address it from that standpoint. And you are an attorney, correct?
Now let's get this clarified for the number one. I have experience in the process. You even heard the lady that said I had blonde hair when I first started this process. I understand the process and I understand the general elements and I understand some of the case law. I am not an expert on redistricting law, but I think this hearing has probably provided an annuity plan to a bunch of law firms across the nation. And I'm going to just tell you, I'm not an expert on redistricting law, but I'm going to believe people sitting at this dais are probably being communicated with by hourly rate lawyers, and my phone is turned off.
And that's fair enough. I want to talk about that Fifth Circuit case that you referenced and referred to as the Petaway versus Galveston County case. We'll call it the Petaway case, which was ironically, the ruling came down, I don't know if you recall or know, was 1 year ago today when the Fifth Circuit issued that opinion. Were you aware of that?
I have a copy before me, and it says August 1st, 2024.
There we go. So in that case, in the Petaway case, is it your understanding that the Fifth Circuit held that coalition claims, and we've talked about, and you've already described what coalition districts are, but coalition claims do not comport with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Is that correct?
In fact, reading the case so everybody hears, it says we conclude that coalition claims do not comport with Section 2's statutory language or with Supreme Court cases interpreting Section 2.
Okay. And there are several, and I think you've already testified to this as well, there are several districts in the current map, not under HB4, but the current map.
Alrighty, we will continue monitoring this here in Texas as it continues. The Committee on Congressional Redistricting, as Texas is looking to redistrict its House. Democrats say it so they can't win the future elections. It's ongoing now, that committee there. We will continue to monitor it, but for now, that is going to do it for this edition of Brookland News Live. I'm Jackson Mitchell. It's been so good to be with you throughout the last 2 hours or so. We're going to wrap up here, though. Have a great rest of your day.